What's up, everybody? I'm Nick.
And I'm Colin.
And we are Still Bussin'. Great to have you with us here on the show. If you're just new to Still Bussin', it's a positive and uplifting show about how no matter life's ups and downs, there's always reasons that things are still bussin'. Today, we're going to be talking about pop culture. We're going to talk about the Barbie movie. It's a little bit of a controversial topic. We weren't sure if we were going to make a show on it, but I figured we should talk about it.
Absolutely.
And kind of its cultural significance. There's going to be some spoilers in there, so if you haven't seen it yet, maybe see it and then listen to Still Bussin'. But if you've seen it and you don't care, or if you don't care either way, whether we're going to ruin it or not for you, then listen and enjoy. So, Colin, kick it off. What did you think of the Barbie movie?
Man, it was so powerful as a film for a couple reasons, but the two biggest ones that I really appreciated were its value as a perception of how men and women have been seen in movies through all of history. So that was its first value. Its second value, which has nothing to do with the message, it's more me like purely admiring the director, was it is without a doubt the most artistic blockbuster I've ever seen.
Really?
Easily. It opens up on a 3-minute Stanley Kubrick 2001: A Space Odyssey homage.
Right. It
goes into the plastic world. It dips into the art house type of films that Greta Gerwig's known for when it's in the back end of the second act when again, spoilers, everything's falling apart and they're trying to find their way, back to the Barbie land and they're in the school or I guess that'd be the early second act. But the point is it goes from this massive film homage. It mentions a lot of great filmmakers. It has all these jokes that are referencing the greatest directors in cinema. And then it goes into this incredibly beautiful, like proper art house cinema moment back into Barbie land. So she dances between like 4 different styles before we even got to the third act. And then the third act, the idea that the woman who created Mattel is this ghost in the building that is still there. And then Barbie's interaction with her on what's a white cyc, that kind of glowing white background. Yeah. That moment, like there are no blockbusters that I can even remotely think of that come close to how artistically they conveyed the concept of this inanimate object choosing life and its ups and downs, and that montage of what it is to be. It seems like they skewed more female in that montage where it was the woman bowling and then the child being born and the trees, but like this gorgeous montage of like the nuances of the highs and lows and nothingness of being a person at the back end of a Barbie blockbuster. It's the craziest, like what Greta Gerwig pulled off is one of the craziest filmmaking stunts I think I've ever seen. She made the most iconic property in the world an art house film. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's insane. And I should probably switch careers, I think is the point.
So he loved it, folks.
Loved it.
Yeah. I think you are really great at reading into the nuances and complexity of things, as this is your industry. This is your thing that you do. I think to back it out to like a everyday consumer kind of a viewer perspective like I did, be honest, it wasn't my first choice to go see the movie. My girlfriend grew up playing with Barbies and she was like, will you go see this with me? And I'm like, sure, sounds great. I was entertained. It was funny. I liked certain parts of it. And yeah, I thought it was great. And I teared up a little bit, certain parts, it's kind of like, I just let myself enjoy it as a film for what it was.
Yeah.
And, I think going into it, I had read some articles and stuff on like, the dynamic between Ken and Barbie and like people saying, oh, this is so anti-male and it's just every male in the film looks and sounds so stupid, like a bumbling idiot. And it's like, I think the large picture that I took away is like, okay, it's sort of supposed to look that way.
Yeah.
And then once Ken goes to the real world, comes back, tries to bring all these iconic things of the patriarchy to Barbie land. It's really like, it's meant to sort of realize, make me realize and make viewers realize that the patriarchy, as we've existed in society, it is ridiculous. It is crazy. And to me, it spoke to the need for independence, like this idea that it's not so much that patriarchy is male-dominated society and this is the way that it should be. Because it's men are dominant to women. It's actually, patriarchy is not good for men either, is the main takeaway that I was seeing, is that patriarchy assumes that there's this power dynamic, when to me, the takeaway from this film was independence, individuality, and, ruining these lines, of course, but it's Barbie and it's Ken, is like, there's this independence. So I was joking with you before this. I was like, I can't wait for the sequel that dives into Ken's life and just like his journey. And and
that is such a beautiful message, as opposed to like, this film has been hailed as this like feminist film, which of course it is. Greta Gerwig is like one of the most prolific like female vocal directors of our time. But also the interesting point she's making is like, it's not, and she does a great job of playing fun with it in the movie, but like, it's not men in charge. It's not women in charge. The point, like you're saying, that real lesson in that third act is like, I am me and you are you. Those don't have to conflate into each other. Those don't have to become one thing for it to have value. I have value. You can find your value without me. And that doesn't take away from who we are. And that's such a beautiful message. Also, I wanted to touch on, you mentioned the people who have been vocal about like, it's this anti-men movie. The really funny thing that I think those writers are missing is like, I should have done my research before this. I forgot the name of it. It's always a German name, but there's a guy's name that has this test. It's like the Geisinger test or something. But basically, if you look at every movie before 2017, 18, this Geisinger, again, I'm butchering the name, sorry. This test basically says, can two female characters go more than a few moments without talking about a man in the movie? And the shocking thing is 85+% of movies can't pass the test.
Really?
Yes. Because, and this is what Greta Gerwig was commenting on with the Ken diagram or dichotomy, was every female, or not every, but 85% of females in the recent past of movie history have merely served to just talk about men, and their only depth was being in love with a man or being loved by a man or being chased by a man or whatever. That was how bland male writing drew female characters. Yeah. So the really funny thing was, in this story about Barbie, Greta Gerwig cleverly flips that on its head and turns it about Barbie, and now Ken's entire purpose is Barbie. And she basically took that test, turned it around, and now people are going, how could you? Not recognizing that has been the norm for 100 years now. Like, it's just this silly miss, but it's brilliant. And it's a brilliant way to showcase it, because Barbie is the perfect tool for that. It is Barbie. It is Barbie and Ken, even though they make a point of that in the movie. It is Barbie and Ken. And so what does a world look like where Barbie is the focus? Well, all of a sudden, a lot of people get upset.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And it's so weird, very ever so slightly towards that end, when there was sort of that reconciliatory moment between Barbie and Ken, I found myself wanting like, oh, maybe she does like him. And then I was like, wait, no. And then when she doesn't, she's like, no, I don't feel that way. And it's like, how is this movie without a love interest with it? And I was like, that's the whole point.
Right.
There's not supposed to be a love interest.
Right. Shocking concept. What if women just have lives that don't revolve around their men? Like, whoa, what a thought. But that is the truth, is so much media is portrayed as that's their purpose. And like, even, in that tail end of the second act, which was so funny, where everything was about horses and men, and all of them were just given foot rubs and beers, just
lots of beers.
Yeah. Brewski beers, I think they call it. But it was like, that was such a great moment where all of a sudden things went back to what is a normal in again, filmmaking prior to, we really did culturally, we did a good job of starting to weed that out in the last like 5-10 years. But prior to that, it's pretty bad. Like even in horror movies where people are dying, they're talking about, do you think he likes me? And you're like, that's not the point at all. But so it was interesting to see them play with that dynamic, and it snaps back into it, and it feels uncomfortably familiar when it is in that moment, when Ken has taken over in Ken Land or whatever. There's this awkward familiarity where you're like, this feels right, and that's terrible.
Yeah, because they had teed it up so well before. They built so much rapport with you. You feel for Barbie. You feel for a connection to the human character.
Yeah.
And then they flip it back. Like, remember, but this is how films usually are. And you're like, oh, that feels painfully comfortable.
Yeah.
But we need to fix that. Yeah. And so you bring to light so many parts of it that I didn't even think about. I'm glad we saved this conversation here. Yeah. So, long story short, we kind of think the Barbie movie's a little bit bussin'. I mean, it's it's not just like, oh, it's a movie for girls.
Yeah,
I think Gosling's great in it.
Yeah. He can do no wrong. He's such a phenomenal actor. But like, Simon, I'm butchering his last name. I feel bad. Simon Lau.
Super good.
Phenomenal. Michael Cera is hysterical. Every one of those Barbie characters was like so perfectly plastic while also having depth. Like every one of those women acted it to a degree that was insane. And then America Ferrera is like, I don't understand how she doesn't have an Oscar yet. She's so good and she's so funny and heartfelt, and like those moments where she's like talking about like contemplating death and stuff. Like I was cracking up at like the heaviest subject. She was phenomenal. I did also want to touch on one thing that at the end of the movie, again, massive spoiler, Barbie is telling Ken, like, maybe you have a life outside of me. Like maybe your world doesn't have to be entirely me. And he goes on this beautiful monologue of like, but when you look at me, like the universe comes back together and my breaths don't count when I'm not with you. And like this whole thing. And she's like, that's not healthy. Like she's like talking him down, and it's 100% true. As he was saying it, I was like, I said half of that stuff to my wife in the last week and 100% meant it. And I was like, I didn't get to see with my wife, but we went home and I went home and I told her about it. And she was just like, oh yeah, you're Ken.
I know a great therapist for you, Colin. I could recommend. Please. Yeah, Ken definitely needs a little bit of therapy. Yeah. Everyone needs a little bit of therapy. Definitely pro therapy over here. But yeah, he almost just doesn't believe it at the moment. He's like, what do you mean? And it was very interesting, very entertaining.
Also, I want to make the point that, again, that I think the value, going outside of the messaging of it and going outside of the skews of opinions, the idea that someone could take the most iconic brand in the world, Barbie, and I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but like this idea that this massive blockbuster, the Barbie movie, it's akin, like brand value wise, it is bigger than a Marvel movie if you really think about the legacy of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But Marvel movies make more money ultimately. Not ignoring that, the idea that maybe one of the most iconic brands and dolls in the world was, the film was created as a fun family movie, and it toes that line perfectly. It's got the heavy elements. It's rated PG, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's this phenomenal family movie that is so artistic and so creative in its storytelling message. I can't think of a blockbuster, and I'm defining blockbuster as $100 million plus budget.
Big movie.
4,000 screen opening weekend, $200 million marketing plus budget. Like I can't think of another movie of that caliber that comes remotely close to touching the artistic integrity that they did in that movie. And that, to me, that almost like Greta Gerwig put a bookmark in time with that movie. And there is no ability to deny that after that, because now every filmmaker who goes into a meeting and tries to pitch this artistic thing, and some executive is going to say, yeah, we just need everyone to get it. And we need it to kind of be a little bit more family friendly. And all those kind of bullshit sentences that I've heard too many times.
Yeah.
The idea that now you can use this as like, well, Barbie did a $220 million opening weekend. Sorry, 270,
yeah,
I believe.
Big. Yeah.
Over $250 million opening weekend. It has surpassed everything of the year. It's phenomenal. It's family. It's hit all the markers. It's got good reviews. That argument is going to start to go away. I mean, it's the equivalent, like Greta Gerwig is now the highest grossing opening weekend for any female director in history. that argument is the same argument that racist film producers would use when they said that you couldn't have an Asian lead, a black lead, a female lead. And then slowly these movies would come out and they'd blow them out of the water, and then it opened the door. The way that Greta Gerwig has now blown open the door for artistic blockbuster filmmaking, there's a really good chance that filmmaking on that level will not possibly be the same after what she's done. And I just can't like thank her enough for that as a film fan, but also as a filmmaker. It's like, I just admire the shit out of her. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's incredible points, man. Just to think about it that deeply. I think you think blockbusters, you just think like explosions and and like and more of what you've seen before, maybe new effects and stuff. Totally. But this kind of took on a lot of new meanings.
Yeah. And it's crazy that it's up against Oppenheimer, which I have not seen yet, but I'm excited to.
Tune in next week. We'll ruin that next week. You want to go see it this weekend? And we'll absolutely spoil that one too.
I actually do, yeah.
It did not get as near of a big of a box office as the
Barbie took a bite out of it. They talk about movies going head to head, and Barbie took a really big bite out of it. My dad is a big film history buff, and he said that this was a phenomenal movie. I've heard from a lot of people say that it's a phenomenal movie, but also he as well as a lot of film critics have said it, like it's Oppenheimer is an important movie. Like you kind of have to see it to understand the value of like what's happening. And so excited to see that. That'll be another time.
Catch us next time there. One other thing that I wanted to,
Please.
One other thing I wanted to quickly talk on was the, just how amazing it was that you think of the iconic image of Barbie, too perfect, perfectionism, and this unrealistic, idealistic beauty standard, and the negativity that has surrounded that. Like Barbie promotes this perfect, unrealistic figure. Like I remember seeing if Barbie existed as a human, like here's what her actual dimensions would be, and horrifying. It's like, oh my god, no one has that. And I don't know, what was your take on that? Because I kind of felt like, sure, the movie touched on that a little bit, maybe skirted around it a little bit, but I think the bigger picture was that like Barbie was never meant to be a realistic human actual person. It was meant to be a blank slate, a stereotype, an open door for the imagination. That's why they then came out with astronaut Barbie and fishing Barbie. Is there a fishing Barbie? Deep sea fishing Barbie and hunting Barbie.
Race car Barbie coming out next year.
Dude, but as the film was doing it, Paige, my girlfriend, was like, I had that Barbie. I had this one. Yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't have that one. It was all real Barbies, right?
What's intriguing is at the end of the movie, they show all the concept art and the actual dolls of the Barbies they reference in the movie that seem absurd, and you get to see what they are.
Yeah,
and
I saved for that. Yeah.
God, that is worth sticking around for. Like it's no Marvel like hint at the next movie at the end of it, but you're sitting there and you're going, surely they didn't have a pregnant Barbie, and all of a sudden they're showing you the Barbie with the doll in the stomach. And I remember in the theater going, out loud.
Odd.
But, that's such an interesting point that you bring up, because I couldn't fathom what that feels like, to be honest. Like there's two sides of this here. One side of it is I couldn't imagine because as a kid, our toys, as a male kid,
G.I. Joe.
And they were just insane.
Action figures.
Like I know I wasn't gonna walk out of a burning building or a blowing or like right. Street Sharks was my favorite one. I know I'm not a shark. It was hard. Like I never put my projections of my future into those toys.
Totally.
I did into movies. I absolutely did into movies and athletes. Characters, totally.
Yeah. But you never wanted to be Rock'em Sock'em Robot.
No. Yeah. I was okay. I never wanted to be, Street Sharks or Ninja. I did want to be Ninja Turtles. I'll give myself that one. But so I say that to say that like I very much understand what they were saying with those. And I've heard so many girls say that they dreamt of being Barbie. I grew up down the street from a girl who had the life-size Barbie at the same time when she was that size. She was say 6 or 7. That doll fit her and she'd put the clothes on and she would dream that she was Barbie. I don't have the context or background to comment on understanding what that's like, but I will say that when I saw that part that you're talking about, that was so well done. Like, oh my God, that they tee it out, because I'm in the intro talking about they solved everything. And then I started to figure out it was a joke, but I was believing the hype that they were sowing, that was the hype that we've all believed, which was like Barbie broke down barriers and Barbie was this and Barbie was that. And it eliminated all these problems. And from the outside, I'm going, oh, that's so neat. I didn't know that. Just completely oblivious.
Yeah.
And then as it got farther in, and again, America Ferrera's daughter in that film, who I don't know her name as an actor, but she was phenomenal. And when she starts bringing up this idea that like this toy that was meant to be what we were excited to be was impossible. So we were given this objective that was unattainable, so that every woman was inherently designed to fail. It hit me with like a ton of bricks. Like I was like, oh, again, I don't have the context. I don't have that upbringing, but it made 100% sense that was something that was probably a really well-meaning attempt from Mattel.
Totally.
They probably meant the best. They were trying to create this icon, and I could understand how falling short of that icon would hurt. Again, I'm a filmmaker, not a successful one, but not yet. But like I look at Greta Gerwig, and I look at Christopher Nolan, and I look at Stanley Kubrick, and if I were to not ever achieve those things in my life, I would feel like a failure to them. So if women are looking at these Barbie dolls, again, girls early, young in their life, are looking at these Barbie dolls as these beacons of what they want to grow up to be, yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure. And so that theme and that narrative, that little kind of story motif in it was phenomenally done. I mean, it was so executed in a way that was so heartbreaking. And again, from the outside, believable, where I'm just going, wow, really cool.
Yeah.
And then you hear how it unfolds in the real world. And then it's just this slap in the face of course that would hurt. Of course that would be a heartbreaking feeling to have as a little kid. And so, Greta Gerwig, my God, so good. She's so good.
Yeah.
She's so good.
Yeah. It was a tough topic to cover. Yeah. And, I mean, when I saw it with my girlfriend, she left the theater crying, thinking about the dolls that she played with, and thinking about her family members. Grandma used to buy her Barbies and stuff, and for her it was a very sweet and positive part of her childhood. But I could for sure see your side of it being like, we've created this completely unrealistic, huge, unattainable standard you're going to fall short of, and then maybe just the point of being a human is the imperfections that come with it.
Totally.
And it's okay to be that.
Which was a great ending when she chose that. That was so beautiful. And that was the point, was that open. And that feeds back into what your ultimate takeaway was spot on, which was at that end when she's having that meeting with the woman who created her. And she was like, there wasn't like, I didn't make Barbie to have an end. Barbie was designed to be open-ended because that is life. It's this open-ended, constant evolution and everything. God, they said the funniest joke. Barbie, early in the film is like, wait, so being a person is everything's changing all the time? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, that sounds terrifying. Yeah, it is actually. But like, that is that point, is the idea of Barbie is unattainable, but the concept of Barbie, from what I understand from my limited knowledge, is like, the story is forever. It is evolving. Barbie is a doctor and a writer and an astronaut and apparently a fisherman. And but it's like that a hunter, yeah, and NASCAR driver. But it's like, it is open-ended, and that was so cool. That understanding that side of it was just incredible. And so I think you nailed it on the head with your assessment of it. Again, I looked at the weird filmy side of it, but your assessment of the message was spot on. Yeah.
We're both right in different ways. And that's why we think the Barbie movie was still pretty bussin'. And, you might want to consider watching it. Sorry if we ruined it for you already. Let us know what you thought about it. Leave us a comment, write us a little something. And on that note, I think we'll see you next time, okay? Cheers.